Hello everyone and welcome on back to the channel. So a couple of you have asked me what I think about the current Alacrity Tempest. Well, I am here to tell you all about it and share a little bit of a build where I can get 100% uptime on Alacrity and then finally talk about my overall impressions. I'm also a little sick right now. I have this very nasty cold. Welcome on back everyone. So what they changed with Tempest and why is it such a huge talking point recently? Well, a lot of specs nowadays really require you to have an application of Alacrity or quickness to be valued in a group, or according to society in Guild Wars 2. Personally, I think that the boons Alacrity and quickness themselves, especially quickness, is a little too strong at the moment. I wouldn't mind seeing them nerfed. And I also think the way that they are placed on elite specs are sometimes not to the benefit of the game. I also think that support specializations such as Tempest, and I would argue that Tempest, Druid, Herald, Firebrand are more supportive in nature. I find healing specs and support specs to really shine when they have Alacrity. And I think that in terms of homogenization and consistency, I wouldn't mind giving Alacrity to the healing specs and giving quickness to the DPS ones. So for Tempest, they've decided to give it Alacrity, which I think is smart and responsible. So what they've done, and where you get Alacrity, is on the Grandmaster Lucid Singularity. Now I'm going to mount up real quick. Actually not going to mount up because that doesn't even change it. The duration on my character is 14 seconds because I'm at maximum concentration, but the normal duration is 7 seconds. So how you apply Alacrity is by successfully completing an overload. Now, it's a start. Having Alacrity on this spec at all is a start. I just think that this gameplay loop of needing to always use your overloads has created a system where you are always swapping attunements and trying to find a window of opportunity within that overload cycle to use your other abilities, which makes it a bit harder when you compare it to certain other elite specializations where you literally don't have to spend time casting anything, spend time planning anything. You just passively or actively on instant casts gain Alacrity or quickness, particularly looking at Mechanist. But that's neither here nor there. This is the current build that I'm running for the specs, and I'm going to talk about my equipment first. So I'm currently running full Harrier, power, healing, power, and concentration, as well as the superior rune of water, getting a bit more healing, boon duration, and I remove a condition from myself and allies when I use a heal skill. Boon duration is very important, especially on supports and healers, where you're wanting a lot of that boon uptime. I'm running usually with the Scepter and Warhorn, because the Warhorn gives you additional application of boons and boon extension, as well as doing more Harrier on my back items, my amulets and rings. Moving over to the build, what I'm currently running with is Water, Arcane, and Tempest. I'm running Piercing Shards because Piercing Shards, as it's probably the best thing for increased damage, though you could take Soothing Ice if you wanted to. I'm also running with Flowing Like Water, or Flow Like Water. Gaining increased damage and also being able to heal myself is pretty nice. And finally, Soothing Power. Arcane Restoration, Arcane Resurrection is very important for rezzing allies around you, as well as Evasive Arcana. If you don't want Evasive Arcana, you could do Bountiful Power, but I'm just going with this. And then as for the Tempest, the creme de la creme, the piece that everyone's talking about is I'm running with Unstable Conduit, Tempestuous Aria, and Lucid Singularity. So this build allows me to pump out additional might and as well as Alacrity because I'm taking this Grandmaster. So we have two allies over here. Oh my god, oh, Lieutenant Francis, I wanted you to stay here so I could put some boots on you. I guess I'll just apply this to our lovely veteran. I was like, oh my god, he's even waving! Oh my god, that was definitely not even planned at all. Okay, so essentially what I tend to do on this build is focus on completing the overloads. So we'll start with an overload and we'll keep going with this, let it pop, and then immediately swap into Earth. And then once using Earth, I use my Sand Squall to extend the duration of Alacrity. While I'm overloading, I can use Field of Burn, which is one of your instant cast shouts. While we're waiting here, you know, theoretically you spam out a Lightning Orb, use some damage, You do more shouts just to keep up that might, and also those lovely applications of auras and additional might stacks and all the features that come with overloads. But as you can see here, we're at a very stable 22 seconds up to 30 seconds of Alacrity. And if Alacrity is really the thing that you are worried about with 100% boon up time, you do have more of a window of opportunity to weave in other abilities. So if I really wanted to, I could stop casting these overloads for around, I'd probably say like 15 seconds is probably safe, and I could use other abilities and focus and maybe camp in another one. But this being said, if you don't have that optimal gear, you might not feel comfortable spending more time in attunements than you really want to. Like, you're going to want to swap around more often. So it really is a little bit of a balancing act. Additionally, with this build, you can pump out decent amount of might just by using Heatsink. Heatsink will then share out might and also fury. Of course, fire itself allows you to get a lot out of this. Also, using your Warhorn 4 in the fire overload allows you to share out more might. So right now, comfortable 25 stacks of might, regen, alacrity, and self-protection on this. And I just went on my Raptor. That was not planned. In general, you can get a lot out of it. You can get a lot of alacrity if you have the proper amounts of concentration. And I don't mind that. I think it is important to incentivize concentration. But in the same breath, I do think that Guild Wars 2 has a little bit of a gearing problem, where gearing is not necessarily the most easy, intuitive thing. There are so many stats, but that's a video for another time in terms of talking about, does Guild Wars 2 have a gear problem, and does it have a stat customization problem? But this is really the build. It's kind of like in this gameplay loop of just going into each of the attunements, blasting in this. It is a little bit formulaic. Then again, every build can be formulaic if you want it to be, but it certainly can pull its weight. And then as for Tempest, healing, if you really need more healing, stay in that water, mama. Stay in that water. You know, you can set out your water globe. You could use your tidal surge to gain a little bit more healing. Your overload water does a lot as well. I'm currently running with Ice Storm just for additional damage, but if you really wanted to get the most out of it in terms of like support, you could do Glyph of Renewal if you wanted to. So that, everyone, is really the build. There's nothing too different about Tempest as a large sweeping system other than this one trait. Now I want to talk about, do I like this trait, and do I think that this is probably smart design? Okay, personally, I don't mind this concept. However, I dislike that it competes with your go-to, or what was your go-to Grandmaster, Elemental Bastion. Heal allies you grant an aura to. This was your best feature as a healer, where you were able to gain additional healing not only to yourself but allies, because your shouts apply auras. Now you cannot get that and alacrity at the same time. And I think healers, they shouldn't be like at each other's throats with like, are you a healer or are you providing alacrity? I think they should be one and the same. I think that if you are playing a healing spec, a healing class, a healing build, alacrity should just be a part of your normal rotation and a part of your normal kit, so that we don't have to spend hours differentiating between various builds and going into an LFG and saying, oh, I'm an alac DPS, but I'm a quickness support, and then it becomes too convoluted. So I think that they really need to hone in on where alacrity is placed and what the identity of each elite specialization is. Additionally, with this being competing with the Grandmaster, you can't have both. Where other specs, you really want both. And I think you should have the ability to apply both more healing and comparable alacrity. So what I would do, personally, is put the alacrity not on this Grandmaster, but I would put the alacrity on Hardy Conduit. Instead of overloads granting you protection, I would just have this be the same thing as Lucid Singularity. Upon successfully completing an overload, grant alacrity to allies around you. That's what I would do. Therefore, you don't need to take it. It wouldn't be something where you're like, oh, I don't know, should I have it or should I not have it? When other specs shine because they're able to heal and they're able to provide these boons, in terms of healers, alacrity, it makes perfect sense for those specs and in terms of gameplay design as a whole. What I would then do with the protection is probably put it on Lucid Singularity, where like protection you have is stronger, 40%, and then gain protection when you use an overload or something. It wouldn't be the most exciting. You could totally just scrap the idea of protection. I don't think it's really needed because you have so much healing. Like 7 or 6 seconds baseline on Hardy Conduit for Alacrity. And then what I would do to compensate, to not create this feedback, this gameplay loop of needing to always swap attunements, I would then, instead of Might on Tempestuous Aria, I would put Alacrity. Using a shout grants Alacrity and inflicts weakness, or maybe change it to vulnerability to get a little bit more damage off of this. I'm not too sure. But I would probably put like 4 seconds of Alacrity upon using a shout. That's what I would do, and that's, I think, what could probably be the best system for this. If you wanted to even put a little bit, honestly, okay, I would probably do three things of Alacrity. Alacrity on Hardy Conduit, change the name. Alacrity on Tempestuous Aria, and then I would put Alacrity on Rebound instead of Fury. I would put like a baseline 5 seconds of Alacrity when you cast Rebound. This would also be a nice callback to Rebound's beta version, where it would reduce people's cooldowns, and then they changed it to this, saving yourself and allies while providing a decent amount of healing. That's what I would do. I think that would probably be the best scenario for Tempest to really shine and not be stuck in this gameplay cycle of needing to always swap attunements. And if you wanted to swap attunements and you could do that because it'd already be on your minor. But if you wanted to maybe play a little bit more in water attunement, because you need more healing, you could definitely play in that if those changes were implemented. Just giving more access of Alacrity on these active abilities, not an ability where you are stuck in a channel for like 3 seconds, or 4 seconds, excuse me, is probably a wiser decision than just having one Grandmaster that competes with the other healing Grandmaster. But that being said, this build and having 100% concentration, while some people might not be at 100%, you could still get decent amount of Alacrity application on this. I just think I would love to see a bit more of a clarification of which roles Elite Specializations are playing, and then based on the role of healer, those elite specs get Alacrity. On the role of damage, those get quickness. And on the role of bruiser, control characters, those get group applications of stability, resistance, stun breaks, all that stuff. I think those would be the biggest boons for each of the quote-unquote Holy Trinity roles that Guild Wars 2 plays with. So everyone, that was my video on the new healing Tempest Alacrity providing. I would love to hear what you all have to say down below. I would love for you to also maybe talk about your ideas as well in terms of how you would maybe position Alacrity a little bit differently on this spec. I love to have these conversations around balance, so feel free to comment whatever you want down below. Thank you all for coming by. If you want to support the Patreon and the channel, you can go over there and get early access to videos. And if you would like to purchase Guild Wars 2 or try it for free, I have links down below, courtesy of ArenaNet. I'm going to go and try not to die. So I will see you all later. Bye, everyone. Mwah.